Long before emperors ruled Rome or pharaohs built their final tombs, there was a man who changed the course of history with vision, courage, and compassion. His name was Cyrus the Great, founder of the Persian Empire and one of the most extraordinary leaders the world has ever known. He united vast lands without tyranny, respected the cultures of the conquered, and issued what many consider the first declaration of human rights. In this video, we journey through the life, legacy, and timeless leadership of Cyrus the Great, the king who built an empire not only with armies, but with wisdom. The sun rose over the rugged terrain of Persis, its golden rays illuminating the jagged peaks that surrounded the modest village of Anshan, nestled in the shadow of mighty mountains. This small settlement was home to a people who had long been overshadowed by their more powerful neighbors, the Medes to the north and the Babylonians far to the west. Yet within this humble land, destiny brewed like a storm on the horizon, waiting to unleash itself upon the world. Cyrus, son of Cambyses and Mandane, princess of Media, was born under peculiar circumstances. His arrival into the world was neither celebrated nor mourned, but whispered about in hushed tones. Legend spoke of dreams that haunted his grandfather, Astyages, king of the Medes, a ruler known as much for his cruelty as his cunning. In these visions, Astyages saw rivers flowing from his daughter Mandane, flooding kingdoms and drowning nations. Fear gripped him, for he believed her offspring would one day rise to overthrow him. To prevent such a fate, he ordered the infant Cyrus to be taken away and left to die in the wilderness. But fate has a way of thwarting even the most meticulous plans. Harpagus, the trusted advisor tasked with carrying out Astyages' grim decree, could not bring himself to commit the act. Instead, he entrusted the child to a shepherd named Mithridates and his wife Spuco, who raised Cyrus as their own. They named him Agradates, meaning the favored one, unaware of the monumental role he would play in shaping history. As Cyrus grew, so too did the whispers of his true lineage. He was unlike other boys, tall, strong, and wise beyond his years. While others squabbled over trivial matters, Cyrus displayed an uncanny ability to resolve disputes fairly, earning the respect of both young and old. It wasn't long before rumors reached Anshan of a boy king destined to unite Persia and lead his people to greatness. One fateful evening, when Cyrus was just 16 summers old, a wandering seer arrived at the village gates, clad in tattered robes and leaning heavily on a staff carved from ancient oak. The man claimed to have traveled from the distant lands of Lydia to seek refuge. But there was something in his piercing gaze that suggested his journey had purpose beyond mere survival. "Who among you is Cyrus?" the seer asked, his voice resonating like thunder. The villagers exchanged nervous glances, unsure whether to trust this stranger. Finally, Cyrus stepped forward, his bearing calm yet commanding. "I am Cyrus," he said simply, meeting the seer's eyes without flinching. The old man studied him intently, then nodded as if confirming some long-held suspicion. "You are no ordinary boy," he declared. "Your bloodline carries the weight of empires. You were spared death not by chance, but by divine will. One day, you shall rule vast territories, bringing peace where there is chaos and justice where there is oppression." Though many dismissed the seer's words as madness, they lingered in Cyrus's mind like an unextinguished flame. That night, unable to sleep, he climbed to the highest hill overlooking Anshan. Beneath the star-studded sky, he pondered the seer's prophecy. Could it be true? Was he meant for something greater than the simple life of a shepherd? His musings were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind him. Turning, he saw Harpagus standing silently, his face illuminated by the flickering light of a torch. The advisor's expression was grave, yet tinged with hope. "It is time you knew the truth," Harpagus said, his voice low and urgent. For hours, he recounted the events surrounding Cyrus's birth, the king's fears, the failed assassination attempt, and the secret kept hidden all these years. By the time he finished, dawn had broken, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Cyrus absorbed the revelation with remarkable composure. Though anger simmered beneath the surface, he understood that vengeance would serve no purpose. What mattered now was what lay ahead, not only for him but for his people. In the weeks that followed, Harpagus became Cyrus's mentor, teaching him the art of leadership, strategy, and diplomacy. Together, they devised a plan to reclaim what was rightfully Cyrus's, the throne of Persia, which had fallen under Median control. But first, they needed allies, loyal men willing to fight for freedom and justice. Cyrus began traveling across Persis, speaking to farmers, artisans, and warriors alike. He listened to their grievances, shared their burdens, and inspired them with promises of a better future. Slowly but surely, a movement began to take shape. Men and women from all walks of life pledged their allegiance to Cyrus, drawn not by fear or coercion, but by genuine admiration for his vision. Meanwhile, news of Cyrus's growing influence reached Astadarishan in Ecbatana, the capital of Media. Initially dismissive, the king soon realized the threat posed by his grandson. Determined to crush the rebellion before it gained momentum, he dispatched a formidable army led by his finest generals. When word of the approaching forces reached Cyrus, panic spread among his followers. Many urged retreat, fearing annihilation against the might of the Medes. But Cyrus refused to yield. Standing atop a rocky outcrop, he addressed his ragtag army with unwavering conviction. "We may lack numbers and weapons," he declared, his voice ringing clear across the valley, "but we possess something far greater: courage, unity, and the righteousness of our cause. Today, we fight not merely for ourselves but for every man, woman, and child yearning to live free. If we stand together, no force on earth can defeat us." Inspired by his words, the Persians prepared for battle. Using the rugged terrain to their advantage, they set traps and ambush points, turning the battlefield into a labyrinth of peril for the advancing Medes. When the two armies clashed, chaos erupted. Arrows darkened the sky, swords clashed in deafening symphonies, and cries of pain echoed through the hills. Despite being outnumbered, the Persians fought with ferocity born of desperation. Cyrus himself led the charge, wielding a sword gifted to him by Harp. Time and again, he rallied his troops, driving back wave after wave of Median soldiers. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the tide turned decisively in favor of the Persians. Exhausted and demoralized, the remnants of the Median army fled, leaving behind countless dead and wounded. Victory belonged to Cyrus, but he wasted no time reveling in triumph. Knowing that Astadarishes would not rest until he was destroyed, Cyrus pressed onward, marching toward Ecbatana. Along the way, he continued to win hearts and minds, expanding his coalition with each passing day. By the time he reached the gates of the Median capital, Cyrus commanded an army twice the size of the one that had defeated the initial invasion. Faced with insurmountable odds, Astadarishes surrendered, ending decades of oppressive rule, rather than exact revenge. However, Cyrus showed mercy, sparing his grandfather's life and offering him a place of honor within his court. Thus began the rise of Cyrus the Great, a man whose name would echo through the ages as a symbol of wisdom, compassion, and unparalleled leadership. But his journey was only beginning. Beyond the borders of Perses and Media lay vast empires teetering on the brink of collapse. ripe for conquest. And though Cyrus sought not dominion for its own sake, but rather the creation of a unified world built on justice and equality, the path ahead would test him in ways he could scarcely imagine. Little did he know, the gods themselves watched with bated breath, eager to see how this mortal would reshape the fabric of history. The victory over the Medes marked the beginning of a new era, not just for Cyrus, but for all of Persia. With Astyages defeated and his empire absorbed into the burgeoning Persian state, Cyrus turned his attention to consolidating power and expanding his influence. Yet even as he worked tirelessly to establish order within his newly acquired territories, whispers of another formidable kingdom reached his ears. Lydia, a land renowned for its wealth, culture, and military might, ruled by King Croesus. Lydia was a glittering jewel in the ancient world. Its capital, Sardis, boasted opulent palaces, bustling markets, and temples adorned with gold. Croesus himself was legendary for his immense riches, often credited with coining the first standardized currency. But more than material wealth, Lydia commanded respect through its strategic alliances and well-trained army. To challenge such a power required not only courage but also cunning. Cyrus knew that conquering Lydia would be no easy feat. Unlike the Medes, whose forces had been weakened by internal strife, Lydia stood united under a charismatic leader who had spent years fortifying his realm against external threats. Moreover, Croesus enjoyed strong ties with powerful neighbors, including Babylon and Egypt, making any direct assault perilous at best. Determined to proceed wisely, Cyrus convened a council of advisors, among them Harpagus, now his most trusted general, and several emissaries from recently annexed regions. Together, they devised a plan that combined diplomacy, espionage, and psychological warfare, an approach uniquely suited to Cyrus's vision of leadership. The first step involved sending envoys to Sardis, ostensibly to offer peace and friendship. These diplomats carried lavish gifts and honeyed words, extolling Cyrus's virtues as a benevolent ruler, eager to foster mutual prosperity. However, their true mission was far more insidious: to gather intelligence on Lydia's defenses, gauge the morale of its people, and sow seeds of doubt about Croesus's ability to withstand a Persian invasion. Croesus, though suspicious, welcomed the envoys warmly. He prided himself on being a man of culture and refinement, qualities he believed set him apart from barbarian kings like Cyrus. Over feasts laden with exotic delicacies and fine wine, he entertained the Persians, boasting of his kingdom's splendor and military prowess. Yet beneath his confident facade lay unease. The tales of Cyrus's rapid rise troubled him deeply. Meanwhile, spies embedded within the Lydian court reported back to Cyrus, painting a detailed picture of Lydia's strengths and weaknesses. They revealed that while Croesus's army was formidable, it relied heavily on cavalry, a vulnerability Cyrus could exploit. Furthermore, they noted growing discontent among certain factions within Lydia, particularly those resentful of Croesus's extravagant lifestyle and heavy taxation. Armed with this knowledge, Cyrus prepared for war. He assembled a massive force comprising not only Persians but also contingents from conquered tribes eager to prove their loyalty. Among them were skilled archers, fearsome infantrymen, and engineers capable of constructing siege weapons on short notice. Most crucially, Cyrus introduced innovations designed to counter Lydia's mounted warriors, including chariots equipped with sethed wheels and units trained specifically to disrupt enemy horse formations. Before launching the invasion, however, Cyrus made one final attempt at diplomacy. He dispatched a letter to Croesus, proposing an alliance rather than conflict. "Let us join our kingdoms," he wrote, "and together build a world where prosperity knows no bounds." It was a masterstroke, calculated to flatter Croesus's ego, while simultaneously casting doubt on his readiness for war. If Croesus accepted, Cyrus would gain a valuable ally. If he rejected, it would appear that Lydia sought battle, not peace. Predictably, Croesus dismissed the proposal, viewing it as a ploy to mask Persian aggression. Confident in his superiority, he mobilized his army and marched eastward to confront Cyrus on the plains of Pteria, near the Halys River. What followed was one of the bloodiest battles of the age. The clash between Persian and Lydian forces lasted for days, neither side gaining a decisive advantage. Cyrus's troops fought valiant employing every tactic drilled into them during months of rigorous training. But Croesus's cavalry proved relentless, breaking through lines and sowing chaos wherever they rode. As casualties mounted, both commanders grew increasingly desperate. Realizing that brute force alone would not secure victory, Cyrus implemented a bold stratagem. Under cover of darkness, he ordered a portion of his army to withdraw stealthily, creating the illusion of retreat. When dawn broke, Croesus interpreted the move as a sign of weakness and pursued the retreating Persians with reckless abandon. Unbeknownst to him, Cyrus had positioned ambush squads along the route, ready to strike when the Lydian forces became disorganized. The trap sprang with devastating effect. As Croesus's cavalry raced ahead, leaving the main body of his army exposed, Persian archers unleashed volleys of arrows, pinning down the advancing troops. Simultaneously, hidden reserves emerged from concealed positions, encircling the bewildered Lydians. Panic spread quickly, turning the battlefield into a killing field. Despite the rout, Croesus managed to escape with a small contingent of loyal soldiers. Retreating to Sardis, he fortified the city, hoping to hold out until reinforcements arrived from his allies. But Cyrus, ever the opportunist, wasted no time exploiting his advantage. Within weeks, he laid siege to Sardis, cutting off supply routes and bombarding its walls with catapults. As the days dragged on, conditions inside the besieged city deteriorated rapidly. Food supplies dwindled, disease spread unchecked, and morale plummeted. Desperate, Croesus sent urgent pleas for aid to Babylon and Egypt, promising untold riches in exchange for military support. But Cyrus anticipated this move, dispatching fast-moving units to intercept and delay any potential relief forces. Finally, after 14 grueling months, the walls of Sardis crumbled under relentless bombardment. Cyrus's troops poured into the city, overwhelming its defenders. In the chaos that ensued, Croesus was captured alive, a broken man stripped of his former glory. Rather than execute his rival, Cyrus chose a different path. Recognizing Croesus's intelligence and experience, he offered him a place in his court, inviting him to share insights gleaned from decades of rule. This act of magnanimity stunned observers, reinforcing Cyrus's reputation as a leader who valued wisdom above vengeance. With Lydia subdued, Cyrus turned his gaze toward the next great prize, Babylon. But before embarking on this monumental endeavor, he took steps to ensure stability in his newly expanded empire. He appointed loyal governors to oversee key provinces, implemented policies aimed at fostering economic growth, and encouraged cultural exchange between diverse peoples. His efforts earned widespread acclaim, transforming erstwhile enemies into steadfast supporters. Yet challenges remained. The conquest of Lydia had depleted resources and stretched supply lines thin. Rumors of unrest in distant corners of the empire threatened to undermine hard-won gains. And looming largest of all was the prospect of facing Nebuchadnezzar II, the mighty king of Babylon, whose sprawling metropolis was said to be impregnable. Undeterred, Cyrus pressed forward, driven by an unshakable belief in his destiny. He understood that true greatness lay not in amassing territory, but in building a legacy a world where justice prevailed and humanity flourished. Each victory brought him closer to realizing this dream. Yet each triumph also revealed new obstacles demanding resolution. As preparations for the campaign against Babylon commenced, Cyrus reflected on how far he had come since those early days in Anshan. From shepherd boy to conqueror of empires, his journey exemplified the transformative power of vision, determination, and compassion. But the road ahead promised trials unlike any he had faced before. For now, though, there was cause for celebration. The fall of Lydia signaled the dawn of a new chapter in Persian history, one defined not by conquest alone, but by the pursuit of unity and progress. And as the sun set over the fertile plains of Mesopotamia, casting long shadows across the land, Cyrus stood poised to write the next verse in this epic saga. Before launching the campaign, Cyrus convened his advisors once again. Harpagus, now grizzled with age yet still sharp-witted, argued for a direct assault using siege engines and battering rams. Others suggested starving the city into submission through prolonged blockades. But Cyrus dismissed both approaches, recognizing their limitations. A direct assault risked catastrophic losses, while a blockade could drag on indefinitely, draining resources and testing the resolve of his troops. Instead, Cyrus proposed a hybrid strategy, one that exploited Babylon's greatest strengths against itself. "Babylon is proud," he declared during the council meeting. "Its people believe themselves untouchable, favored by the gods. Let us use that pride to our advantage." The first phase of the plan involved cutting off Babylon's trade routes and isolating it from neighboring allies. Cyrus dispatched fast-moving cavalry units to disrupt supply lines, targeting caravans laden with grain, livestock, and precious metals. Simultaneously, he sent envoys to nearby kingdoms, offering lucrative deals in exchange for neutrality. By weakening Babylon economically and diplomatically, Cyrus hoped to create cracks in its seemingly impenetrable facade. Meanwhile, spies infiltrated the city, gathering intelligence on troop movements, morale, and vulnerabilities. They reported back that while Babylon's outer defenses were indeed formidable, internal tensions simmered beneath the surface. Years of heavy taxation and forced labor had bred resentment among the lower classes, who viewed Nebuchadnezzar's grand projects as symbols of oppression rather than progress. Furthermore, religious factions within the city disputed the king's authority, accusing him of hubris and sacrilege. Armed with this knowledge, Cyrus devised a second phase of his plan: psychological warfare. He ordered his scribes to compose letters addressed to prominent citizens of Babylon, subtly questioning Nebuchadnezzar's divine mandate and portraying Cyrus as a liberator sent by the gods to restore justice. These missives were smuggled into the city via merchants and travelers, spreading doubt and discord among the populace. As preparations neared completion, Cyrus led his army toward Babylon, encamping on the outskirts of the city. Rather than immediately launching an attack, he adopted a patient stance, allowing his forces to rest and regroup while maintaining constant pressure through skirmishes and raids. This tactic served two purposes. It kept Babylon's defenders on edge, preventing them from growing complacent, and gave Cyrus time to refine his ultimate gambit. That gambit came in the form of a daring engineering feat: an elaborate system of canals designed to divert the waters of the Euphrates River. Babylon's reliance on the river for sustenance and transportation made it vulnerable to manipulation. By altering its flow, Cyrus aimed to create opportunities for infiltration and sabotage. Under cover of darkness, Persian engineers began constructing dams and channels upstream, carefully redirecting the river's course. The operation required precision and secrecy, as any misstep could alert Babylonian scouts or cause catastrophic flooding. Despite these risks, the project proceeded smoothly, thanks to Cyrus's meticulous planning and the expertise of his engineers. When the moment arrived, Cyrus ordered the final phase of the diversion. As the water level in the Euphrates dropped significantly, Persian soldiers slipped into the exposed riverbed, using it as a hidden pathway into the heart of the city. Meanwhile, a diversionary force launched a noisy assault on the main gates, drawing Babylonian troops away from critical points along the wall. Inside the city, chaos erupted as Persian infiltrators emerged from the shadows, overwhelming unsuspecting guards and seizing control of key locations. The element of surprise proved decisive, allowing Cyrus's forces to establish footholds before the full weight of Babylon's defenses could be brought to bear. By the time Nebuchadnezzar realized what was happening, much of the city was already in Persian hands. In a desperate bid to rally his troops, the Babylonian king mounted a counterattack, leading a fierce charge through the streets. But the tide had turned irreversibly in Cyrus's favor. Outnumbered and outmaneuvered, Nebuchadnezzar's forces crumbled under relentless pressure. In the end, the king himself was captured, his dreams of eternal glory reduced to ashes. With Babylon subdued, Cyrus entered the city triumphantly, greeted by cheering crowds eager to welcome their new ruler. Unlike previous conquerors, who might have razed the city or enslaved its inhabitants, Cyrus chose a different path. He issued a proclamation declaring Babylon an integral part of his empire, promising to uphold its traditions and protect its people. He ordered the restoration of temples desecrated during years of neglect and invited scholars, artisans, and priests to contribute to the cultural renaissance he envisioned. This act of magnanimity earned Cyrus widespread admiration, not only among the Babylonians but also across the wider region. Tales of his wisdom and compassion spread far and wide, inspiring awe and respect even among former adversaries. In particular, his treatment of the Jewish exiles deported to Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar became a defining moment in history. Recognizing their plight, Cyrus allowed the Jews to return to their homeland and rebuild their temple in Jerusalem, a gesture that earned him the title Anointed of the Lord in biblical texts. Yet, despite these accomplishments, Cyrus understood that conquering Babylon was merely the beginning of a larger mission. His empire now spanned vast territories, encompassing diverse cultures, languages, and religions. To govern effectively, he needed to implement policies that promoted unity without stifling individual identities. Thus, he introduced groundbreaking reforms, including standardized weights and measures, a postal system connecting distant provinces, and laws ensuring freedom of worship. These innovations marked a turning point in human history, laying the foundation for what historians would later call the First Persian Empire, the Achaemenid Empire. Under Cyrus's leadership, this sprawling realm became a beacon of tolerance, innovation, and prosperity, setting a precedent for future civilizations. But challenges persisted. The sheer size of the empire made centralized control difficult, requiring constant vigilance to prevent rebellions and maintain order. Moreover, rival powers continued to eye Persia with suspicion, plotting ways to undermine its dominance. Chief among these was Egypt, whose pharaohs viewed Cyrus as a threat to their sovereignty. Aware of these threats, Cyrus remained ever vigilant, balancing acts of diplomacy with displays of military might. He forged alliances with neighboring states, securing their loyalty through marriage pacts and economic incentives. At the same time, he maintained a standing army capable of responding swiftly to any provocation. As the years passed, Cyrus's legend grew. Stories of his exploits inspired poets and chroniclers, who immortalized him in epic tales and inscriptions. Yet behind the myth lay a man driven by a singular vision, to create a world where justice prevailed and humanity thrived. Each victory brought him closer to realizing this dream. Yet each triumph also revealed new obstacles demanding resolution. For now, Though, there was cause for reflection. Standing atop the ziggurat of Esagila, overlooking the majestic city of Babylon bathed in golden sunlight, Cyrus felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The road ahead promised trials unlike any he had faced before. But he faced them with unwavering resolve, for in his heart he carried the hope that his efforts would leave a lasting legacy, a testament to the enduring power of compassion, wisdom, and unity. With Babylon securely under his dominion and its people embracing the dawn of a new era, Cyrus turned his attention to the monumental task of governance. His empire now stretched from the rugged mountains of Perses in the east to the fertile plains of Mesopotamia in the west, a vast expanse encompassing dozens of ethnicities, languages, and traditions. To rule such a diverse realm required not only military might, but also political acumen, cultural sensitivity, and administrative innovation. Cyrus understood that unity could not be imposed through force alone. It had to be cultivated through policies that respected local customs while fostering loyalty to the central authority. The first step was establishing a system of governance that balanced centralized control with regional autonomy. Drawing on lessons learned during the conquest of Lydia and Babylon, Cyrus recognized the importance of appointing trusted officials known as satraps to oversee each province. These satraps served as intermediaries between the imperial court and their respective regions, ensuring efficient administration while preventing unrest or rebellion. Each satrap was granted significant autonomy to manage local affairs, including tax collection, law enforcement, and infrastructure development, provided they remained loyal to Cyrus and adhered to his overarching principles of justice and fairness. To maintain accountability, Cyrus instituted a network of royal inspectors called the Eyes and Ears of the King. These envoys traveled throughout the empire, reporting directly to him on the conduct of satraps and the well-being of their subjects. Their presence acted as both a deterrent against corruption and a means of gathering valuable intelligence about potential threats. This dual system of decentralized authority, combined with centralized oversight, became one of the hallmarks of Achaemenid governance, setting a precedent for future empires. Yet governance extended beyond mere bureaucracy. Cyrus sought to create an identity that transcended individual tribes and nations, uniting his subjects under a shared vision of prosperity and harmony. He achieved this by promoting cross-cultural exchange, encouraging trade, art, and scholarship across the empire. Roads were constructed to connect distant provinces, facilitating commerce and communication. The Royal Road, stretching over 1,600 miles from Sardis in Lydia to Susa in Persia, became a lifeline linking disparate communities and fostering economic interdependence. Religious tolerance played a pivotal role in Cyrus's strategy for unification. Unlike many rulers of his time, who often imposed their own beliefs on conquered peoples, Cyrus embraced diversity, seeing it as a source of strength rather than division. Upon entering Babylon, he had famously restored temples and allowed displaced groups, such as the Jews, to return home and rebuild their sacred sites. This policy of religious freedom earned him widespread admiration and solidified his reputation as a benevolent leader. Cyrus codified these ideals in what historians have come to regard as one of his most enduring legacies, the Cyrus cylinder, discovered centuries later in the ruins of Babylon. This clay artifact is inscribed with a declaration outlining Cyrus's vision for his empire. It speaks of ending oppression, freeing enslaved peoples, and respecting the rights of all citizens to live according to their own laws and traditions. While some modern scholars debate whether the cylinder represents genuine reform or clever propaganda, there is no denying its profound impact on ancient perceptions of leadership. As word of Cyrus's reforms spread, so too did tales of his wisdom and compassion. Delegations arrived at his court from far-flung lands, seeking alliances or offering tribute. Merchants flocked to Persian markets, eager to trade exotic goods for Persian silver and gold. Artists and philosophers journeyed to the capital cities of Pasargadae and Susa, drawn by the promise of patronage and intellectual exchange. Under Cyrus's reign, the Persian Empire became a melting pot of ideas, cultures, and innovations, a testament to the transformative power of inclusive governance. But even as prosperity flourished within the empire's borders, external threats loomed large. To the south lay Egypt, whose pharaohs viewed Cyrus's growing influence with suspicion and hostility. For generations, Egypt had prided itself on its independence, regarding foreign powers as barbarians unfit to tread upon its sacred soil. Now, with Persia expanding rapidly, Egyptian leaders feared losing their sovereignty to what they perceived as an encroaching juggernaut. Determined to neutralize this threat before it escalated into open conflict, Cyrus dispatched emissaries to the Egyptian court, proposing a treaty of mutual non-aggression. He offered generous terms, including favorable trade agreements and assurances that Persian forces would respect Egypt's borders. However, the pharaohs rejected these overtures, interpreting them as signs of weakness rather than goodwill. Emboldened by their refusal, they began amassing troops along the frontier, preparing for war. Cyrus responded with characteristic resolve. Recognizing that diplomacy had failed, he mobilized his army once again, determined to bring Egypt into the fold. Yet conquering Egypt posed unique challenges. Its geography, characterized by vast deserts, treacherous marshes, and the life-giving Nile River, made traditional siege tactics impractical. Moreover, the Egyptians enjoyed strong support from neighboring states, particularly Nubia and Libya, which supplied reinforcements and resources. Undeterred, Cyrus devised a multifaceted strategy, tailored to Egypt's specific conditions. First, he ordered engineers to construct advanced irrigation systems, capable of sustaining his troops in the arid landscape. Next, he recruited guides familiar with the terrain, ensuring his forces could navigate safely without succumbing to dehydration or ambush. Finally, he employed psychological warfare, spreading rumors among Egyptian ranks about Persian invincibility and divine favor. When the invasion commenced, Cyrus led his army across the Sinai Peninsula, advancing steadily toward the Nile Delta. Along the way, he encountered fierce resistance from local militias, who fought tenaciously to defend their homeland. Despite heavy losses, Cyrus pressed forward, inspired by the knowledge that victory would secure his empire's southern flank and eliminate a persistent rival. The decisive battle took place near Pelusium, a strategic fortress guarding the eastern approaches to Egypt. Outnumbered and outmaneuvered, the Egyptian forces eventually broke under relentless pressure, retreating in disarray. With Pelusium secured, Cyrus marched triumphantly into Memphis, the ancient capital of Egypt, where he was greeted by crowds weary of war and eager for peace. True to form, Cyrus treated the defeated Egyptians with magnanimity, sparing their leaders and integrating them into his administration. He declared himself Pharaoh of Egypt, adopting native titles and participating in traditional ceremonies to win the hearts of his new subjects. At the same time, he introduced Persian innovations, such as standardized coinage and improved agricultural techniques, to enhance productivity and stability. By incorporating Egypt into his empire, Cyrus achieved a feat unparalleled in history. He had united three of the world's greatest civilizations under a single banner. From the Indus Valley in the east to the Nile Delta in the west, his dominions spanned continents, encompassing nearly half of the known world. Yet, despite this unprecedented achievement, Cyrus remained humble, viewing his success not as evidence of personal greatness but as proof of humanity's capacity for cooperation and progress. Reflecting on his accomplishments, Cyrus returned to Pasargadae, the city he had founded as the spiritual heart of his empire. Here, amidst lush gardens and towering columns, he began work on a grand palace complex designed to symbolize the ideals of his reign. At its center stood a simple yet elegant tomb, intended to serve as his final resting place. Inscribed above the entrance were words that encapsulated his philosophy. "I am Cyrus, king of the universe, great king, mighty king, king of Babylon, king of Sumer and Akkad, king of the four corners of the world." Though he knew death was inevitable, Cyrus approached it with equanimity, confident that his legacy would endure long after he was gone. He entrusted the future of his empire to his son Cambyses II, grooming him to carry forward the torch of justice and unity. But even as he prepared for the inevitable transition of power, Cyrus remained active, traveling across his realm to address grievances, celebrate achievements, and reinforce bonds of loyalty. One such journey brought him to the northern frontier, where reports of unrest among nomadic tribes demanded his attention. Accompanied by a small retinue of guards, Cyrus ventured into unfamiliar territory, determined to resolve the conflict personally. It was here, amid the wind-swept steppes and snow-capped peaks, that fate intervened. According to legend, Cyrus fell ill during the expedition, succumbing to fever and exhaustion. Though his exact cause of death remains shrouded in mystery, accounts agree that he passed away peacefully, surrounded by those who loved and revered him. His body was transported back to Pasargada, where it was laid to rest in the tomb he had prepared years earlier. News of Cyrus's passing reverberated across the empire, sparking mourning and reflection. Tributes poured in from every corner of the realm, attesting to the profound impact he had made on countless lives. Even former enemies paid homage, acknowledging his unique blend of strength and compassion. In the centuries that followed, Cyrus's name continued to inspire admiration and awe. Greek historians like Herodotus immortalized him as a paragon of virtue, while biblical texts celebrated him as a messianic figure sent by God to liberate his people. Modern scholars praise him as a pioneer of human rights and multiculturalism, crediting him with laying the groundwork for democratic ideals. Yet perhaps the true measure of Cyrus's greatness lies not in monuments or accolades, but in the enduring spirit of his vision. Through wisdom, courage, and unwavering commitment to justice, he transformed a fragmented world into a unified whole, a testament to the boundless possibilities of human endeavor. As the sun set over the Persian plains, casting long shadows across the land, the echoes of Cyrus's legacy lingered, a reminder that even the mightiest empires are built not on stone and steel but on dreams of a better tomorrow. The death of Cyrus the Great left an indelible void in the heart of the Persian Empire. Though his body lay entombed in Pasargada, his spirit continued to resonate across the vast territories he had united under a single banner. His son, Cambyses II, inherited not only the throne, but also the monumental responsibility of upholding his father's vision, a task as daunting as it was essential. Cambyses ascended to power with mixed emotions. On one hand, he felt immense pride in being chosen by Cyrus to carry forward the legacy of the Achaemenid dynasty. On the other, he grappled with self-doubt, acutely aware that he lacked his father's charisma, wisdom, and diplomatic finesse. While Cyrus had been revered as a unifier and liberator, Cambyses feared being perceived as merely a successor riding on the coattails of greatness. To quell these insecurities, Cambyses immersed himself in preparation for kingship. From a young age, he had been groomed by Cyrus and Harpagus to lead armies and administer provinces. He accompanied his father on campaigns, learning firsthand the intricacies of military strategy and governance. Yet, despite this rigorous training, Cambyses struggled to reconcile his own temperament, prone to impulsiveness and occasional cruelty, with the compassionate leadership style that defined Cyrus's reign. Upon assuming the throne, Cambyses sought to assert his authority through bold action. Determined to expand the empire further, he set his sights on Egypt, where simmering tensions between Persians and Egyptians threatened stability. Despite Cyrus having already conquered Egypt, local resistance persisted, fueled by nationalist fervor and resentment toward foreign rule. Cambyses viewed subjugating Egypt fully as both a necessity and an opportunity to prove himself worthy of his father's mantle. Before launching the campaign, Cambyses convened his advisors, including veteran generals who had served under Cyrus. They warned him of the challenges ahead, not only the logistical difficulties of waging war in Egypt's harsh terrain, but also the psychological toll of facing an enemy entrenched in its homeland. Yet Cambyses dismissed their concerns, confident in his ability to replicate his father's successes. The invasion began with characteristic aggression. Cambyses led his forces southward, traversing the Sinai Desert with remarkable speed. Unlike Cyrus, who had taken pains to win over local populations through diplomacy and mercy, Cambyses adopted a more ruthless approach. He crushed dissent brutally, executing rebel leaders and razing villages suspected of harboring insurgents. This scorched earth policy earned him fear but little respect among the Egyptians. When Cambyses reached Memphis, the symbolic heart of Egypt, he encountered fierce resistance. The city's defenders, bolstered by reinforcements from Nubia, mounted a spirited defense, inflicting heavy casualties on the Persian army. For weeks, the two sides clashed in brutal urban warfare, turning streets into battlegrounds and homes into fortresses. Eventually, sheer numbers gave Cambyses the upper hand, allowing him to breach the city walls and claim victory. Yet triumph came at a cost. The prolonged siege left Memphis devastated, its once thriving markets reduced to rubble and its population decimated by famine and disease. Rather than restoring order and rebuilding, as Cyrus might have done, Cambyses imposed harsh penalties on the defeated Egyptians, confiscating wealth and enslaving captives. These actions alienated even those who had initially welcomed Persian rule, sowing seeds of rebellion that would haunt the empire for years to come. Despite these setbacks, Cambyses achieved one significant milestone during his campaign: the conquest of Siwa Oasis and the famed Oracle of Amun. Ancient Egyptians believed this oracle held divine authority, capable of legitimizing rulership. By capturing Siwa, Cambyses hoped to secure legitimacy in the eyes of his subjects, while undermining traditional Egyptian claims to sovereignty. However, when he arrived at the temple, the priest refused to acknowledge him as pharaoh, citing omens foretelling disaster if they did so. Enraged by their defiance, Cambyses ordered the destruction of sacred sites and the execution of priests. This act of sacrilege shocked both Egyptians and Persians alike, reinforcing perceptions of Cambyses as impulsive and irreverent. Tales of his erratic behavior spread rapidly, fueling rumors of madness and instability. As discontent grew within Egypt, unrest flared elsewhere in the empire. In Babylon, which Cyrus had painstakingly integrated into the Persian fold, dissatisfaction with Cambyses's policies boiled over into open rebellion. Led by a usurper named Nebuchadnezzar III, the insurgents declared independence, rallying support from disaffected nobles and commoners alike. News of the uprising reached Cambyses while he was still in Egypt, forcing him to divide his attention between suppressing internal dissent and consolidating external gains. Determined to crush the rebellion swiftly, Cambyses marched northward, leaving behind a garrison to maintain control in Egypt. Along the way, he encountered logistical challenges exacerbated by his earlier scorched earth tactics, which had depleted resources and alienated potential allies. Nevertheless, he pressed on, driven by a desire to restore order and vindicate his reputation. The battle for Babylon proved costly and protracted. Unlike his father, who had relied on cunning and innovation to breach the city's defenses, Cambyses opted for brute force, bombarding the walls with siege engines and launching repeated frontal assaults. Though eventually successful, the victory left Babylon scarred and embittered. its people nursing grievances that would resurface in future generations. By the time Cambyses returned to Susa, the imperial capital, his health had deteriorated significantly. Years of relentless campaigning, coupled with mounting stress, took a toll on his physical and mental well-being. Chroniclers describe him as increasingly erratic, prone to fits of rage and paranoia. Some accounts attribute his decline to illness. Others suggest psychological breakdown brought on by guilt and isolation. In his final days, Cambyses attempted to salvage his legacy by addressing lingering issues within the empire. He issued edicts reaffirming religious tolerance and promising reparations to regions affected by his campaigns. Yet these gestures came too late to repair the damage wrought by his earlier decisions. When he died unexpectedly en route to Perses, some say from an accidental injury, others whisper foul play, the empire teetered on the brink of chaos. Cambyses' untimely demise plunged the Achaemenid dynasty into crisis. Without a clear heir, rival factions vied for control, each claiming legitimacy based on lineage or merit. Amidst this turmoil emerged Darius I, a distant relative of Cyrus whose audacity and strategic brilliance enabled him to seize power. Known as Darius the Great, he would go on to stabilize the empire, implement sweeping reforms, and usher in a golden age of Persian civilization. Yet even as Darius rose to prominence, the shadow of Cyrus loomed large. His ideals of justice, unity, and compassion remained touchstones against which subsequent rulers measured themselves. Cambyses' turbulent reign served as a cautionary tale, illustrating the perils of abandoning those principles in pursuit of personal glory. For all his flaws, however, Cambyses cannot be dismissed as a mere footnote in history. His efforts to expand the empire, though marred by excesses, underscored the complexities of ruling a sprawling multicultural state. Moreover, his failures highlighted the delicate balance required to maintain cohesion amidst diversity, a lesson that resonated deeply with future generations. As dusk fell over Susa, casting long shadows across the palace courtyards, courtiers gathered to mourn Cambyses and speculate about what lay ahead. The empire stood at a crossroads, poised between fragmentation and renewal. Whether it would endure depended not only on the strength of its institutions but also on the character of its leaders. In the quiet moments following Cambyses' passing, many reflected on the qualities that had made Cyrus so extraordinary. Not just his achievements but his humanity. It was this humanity, embodied in acts of kindness, humility, and vision, that had transformed a shepherd boy into a legend, and it was this same humanity that offered hope for the future, reminding all who dare dream of greatness that true leadership lies not in dominion but in service. The death of Cambyses II plunged the Persian Empire into a period of uncertainty and instability. His erratic rule, marked by military overreach and alienation of key provinces, had left fissures running deep within the empire's foundation. With no clear successor to assume the throne, rival factions emerged, each vying for power in a chaotic struggle that threatened to unravel everything Cyrus the Great had built. It was during this tumultuous time that Darius I, later known as Darius the Great, rose to prominence, a man whose leadership would not only restore order but also elevate the empire to unprecedented heights. Born into a lesser branch of the Achaemenid dynasty, Darius initially seemed an unlikely candidate for kingship. Unlike his predecessors, who could trace their lineage directly to Cyrus, Darius claimed descent from a collateral line of Persian nobility. Yet what he lacked in royal pedigree, he more than compensated for with intelligence, ambition, and an unyielding sense of purpose. From a young age, he distinguished himself through acts of valor and strategic acumen, earning the respect of both peers and superiors. When Cambyses died under mysterious circumstances while returning from Egypt, rumors of assassination swirled throughout the court. Some accused members of the royal guard. Others pointed fingers at disgruntled satraps or even Cambyses himself, suggesting suicide brought on by despair. Regardless of the truth, one thing was certain. Without a legitimate heir, the empire faced fragmentation. Seizing the opportunity, a usurper named Gymeta declared himself king, claiming to be Bardia, Cambyses' younger brother, who had supposedly been murdered years earlier. Gymeta's deception found traction among many Persians eager for stability after Cambyses' turbulent reign. However, a small group of nobles, including Darius, recognized the impostor for what he was, a fraud seeking to exploit the empire's vulnerability. In a daring coup, Darius and 6 co-conspirators, collectively known as the Seven, ambushed Gymeta at a fortress in Media, killing him and declaring Darius the rightful ruler. This bold move did not immediately quell dissent. Instead, it sparked widespread rebellion across the empire. Provinces such as Babylon, Sasiana, and Armenia rose up against Darius, viewing him as yet another illegitimate claimant to the throne. Faced with insurrection on multiple fronts, Darius demonstrated remarkable resilience and ingenuity. Rather than attempting to suppress all rebellions simultaneously, a strategy doomed to failure, he adopted a methodical approach, targeting each uprising individually while maintaining control over core territories. He began by securing Persis, the heartland of the empire, ensuring that his base of operations remained stable. From there, he launched a series of lightning-fast campaigns, employing speed, surprise, and psychological warfare to outmaneuver his opponents. One of Darius's most notable victories came in Babylon, where a second pretender to the throne, also named Nebuchadnezzar III, rallied support among disaffected citizens. Determined to reclaim the city for the empire, Darius led his forces into Mesopotamia, engaging in brutal skirmishes along the way. When he finally reached Babylon, he employed a combination of siege tactics and diplomacy to break the resistance. After months of relentless pressure, the city surrendered, and Darius entered triumphantly, restoring Persian authority. To legitimize his rule and quell lingering doubts about his legitimacy, Darius commissioned an inscription carved into a cliffside at Behistun, a monumental text detailing his rise to power and enumerating his accomplishments. Written in 3 languages, Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian, the Behistun inscription served as both propaganda and historical record, asserting Darius's divine mandate and portraying him as a restorer of justice and unity. The inscription became a cornerstone of imperial ideology, reinforcing Darius's image as a worthy successor to Cyrus. With the immediate threat of rebellion subdued, Darius turned his attention to rebuilding and reforming the empire. Recognizing that effective governance required innovation, he introduced sweeping changes designed to enhance efficiency, transparency, and accountability. Among his most significant reforms was the reorganization of provincial administration. Drawing inspiration from Cyrus's system of satrapies, Darius expanded and refined it, dividing the empire into 20 provinces, each overseen by a loyal governor. To prevent corruption and ensure compliance, he established a network of inspectors, the eyes and ears of the king, who traveled incognito to monitor satraps and report back to the central government. Darius also standardized weights, measures, and coinage across the empire, facilitating trade and economic integration. The introduction of the daric, a gold coin bearing his likeness, became a symbol of Persian prosperity and influence. Additionally, he invested heavily in infrastructure, constructing roads, bridges, and canals to connect distant regions. The Royal Road, originally built under Cyrus, was extended and improved, enabling messengers to traverse the empire in record time. a testament to Darius's commitment to communication and cohesion. Yet perhaps Darius's greatest achievement lay in his promotion of cultural and religious tolerance. Like Cyrus before him, Darius embraced diversity, seeing it as a source of strength rather than division. He allowed conquered peoples to retain their customs, languages, and faiths, fostering goodwill and reducing resentment. Temples were rebuilt, festivals celebrated, and local traditions preserved, all under the watchful eye of a benevolent ruler committed to harmony. Despite these successes, challenges persisted. To the northwest, the Greek city-states posed a persistent threat, their fractious politics and martial prowess making them difficult to subdue. Determined to extend Persian influence into Europe, Darius launched several expeditions against Greece, culminating in the famous Battle of Marathon in 490 BCE. Although the campaign ended in defeat, it underscored Darius's determination to expand the empire's reach and secure its borders. At home, Darius faced internal pressures as well. The sheer size of the empire made centralized control increasingly difficult, requiring constant vigilance to prevent rebellions and maintain loyalty. Moreover, the demands of administering such a vast realm placed immense strain on resources, necessitating careful fiscal management and innovative solutions. To address these issues, Darius implemented a groundbreaking system of taxation based on provincial wealth and productivity. Each satrapy was assessed according to its capacity to contribute, ensuring fairness while maximizing revenue. These funds were used to finance public works projects, maintain armies, and fund ambitious architectural endeavors, including the construction of Persepolis, a magnificent new capital designed to reflect the grandeur of the empire. Persepolis embodied Darius's vision of unity and splendor. Situated atop a rocky plateau overlooking fertile plains, the city featured towering columns, intricate reliefs, and sprawling palaces adorned with depictions of diverse cultures paying tribute to the king. Its design emphasized inclusivity and collaboration, celebrating the rich tapestry of peoples and traditions that constituted the Persian Empire. As Darius consolidated his power and implemented reforms, he remained mindful of his predecessor's legacy. Cyrus's ideals of justice, compassion, and unity continued to guide his decisions, serving as both inspiration and benchmark. In moments of doubt, Darius often reflected on Cyrus's achievements, drawing strength from the knowledge that true greatness lay not in conquest alone but in the ability to uplift humanity. By the end of his reign, Darius had transformed the Persian Empire into a paragon of stability, prosperity, and innovation. His policies laid the groundwork for centuries of Achaemenid dominance, influencing subsequent rulers and shaping the course of history. Yet despite his accomplishments, Darius never lost sight of the fragility of power. He understood that empires, like individuals, must adapt to survive, that complacency invites decay, while vigilance ensures progress. As twilight descended over Persepolis, casting golden light across its marble courtyards and majestic halls, Darius stood gazing out at the horizon. Before him stretched an empire unlike any the world had ever seen. A realm united not by force but by shared aspirations. And though he knew his time was fleeting, he took solace in the belief that his efforts would endure, carried forward by those who dared to dream of a better tomorrow. The reign of Darius the Great marked a golden age for the Persian Empire, characterized by unprecedented stability, prosperity, and cultural flourishing. Yet even as the empire reached its zenith, storm clouds gathered on the horizon, storms born not of internal strife but of external conflict. To the northwest lay Greece, a fragmented yet fiercely independent collection of city-states, whose martial spirit and democratic ideals stood in stark contrast to Persian autocracy. What began as minor skirmishes along the frontier soon escalated into one of history's most defining conflicts, the Persian Wars, a clash of civilizations that would shape the destiny of both empires. Darius's decision to invade Greece stemmed from a combination of strategic necessity and personal ambition. For years, Greek cities such as Athens and Eretria had supported rebellions within the Persian Empire, particularly during the Ionian Revolt 499. This uprising, led by Greek settlers in Asia Minor against Persian rule, exposed vulnerabilities in Darius's administration and emboldened other provinces to consider defiance. Though the revolt was ultimately crushed, Darius vowed retribution, viewing Greece as a hotbed of sedition that needed to be brought to heel. Moreover, Greece represented an untapped opportunity for expansion. Its fertile lands, skilled artisans, and burgeoning trade networks promised immense wealth, while its strategic location offered access to new markets and resources. By subjugating Greece, Darius hoped to secure his empire's western flank and solidify Persian dominance over the Mediterranean world. Preparations for the invasion were meticulous. Darius assembled a massive army drawn from every corner of the empire, including Persians, Medes. It assembled a massive army drawn from every corner of the empire, including Persians, Medes, Scythians. Naval forces were also mobilized, comprising ships from Phoenicia, Cyprus, and Ionia. Together, these land and sea contingents formed one of the largest military expeditions the ancient world had ever seen, a testament to Darius's organizational prowess and imperial reach. In 4092 BCE, the first Persian campaign set sail under the command of Mardonius, Darius's son-in-law. Crossing the Hellespont, modern-day Dardanelles, the fleet aimed to secure Thrace and Macedonia before advancing southward into Greece. However, fate intervened when a violent storm wrecked much of the navy near Mount Athos, forcing Mardonius to retreat. Undeterred, Darius launched a second expedition 2 years later, this time targeting key Greek cities directly. The year 490 BCE witnessed the arrival of Persian forces on the shores of Attica, where they laid siege to Eretria and marched toward Athens. Despite their numerical superiority, the Persians faced stiff resistance from the Greeks, who employed innovative tactics and unparalleled discipline. At Marathon, a plain northeast of Athens, the Athenian general Miltiades orchestrated a daring maneuver that caught the invaders off guard. Deploying his troops in a thin line to match the breadth of the Persian formation, Miltiades ordered a concentrated charge at the enemy center, breaking through and routing the disorganized ranks. The Battle of Marathon proved decisive, marking the first major victory for the Greeks against the mighty Persian Empire. Though casualties were heavy on both sides, the psychological impact reverberated far beyond the battlefield. News of the triumph spread quickly, bolstering Greek morale while dealing a blow to Persian prestige. For Darius, it was a bitter setback, one that fueled his resolve to return with even greater force. Before he could launch another invasion, however, illness claimed Darius's life in 4086 BC. His death left the empire in the hands of his son, Xerxes I, who inherited not only the throne but also the unfinished business of subjugating Greece. Like his father, Xerxes viewed the Greek campaign as essential to securing Persian hegemony. Yet unlike Darius, whose approach had been measured and pragmatic, Xerxes approached the task with grandiosity and hubris. To prepare for war, Xerxes spared no expense. He conscripted soldiers from across the empire, amassing an army so vast that contemporary accounts described it as numbering in the millions, a figure likely exaggerated but indicative of its sheer scale. Engineers constructed a pontoon bridge across the Hellespont, allowing troops to cross en masse, while supply lines stretched hundreds of miles to sustain the behemoth force. Ships filled harbors, ready to transport reinforcements and blockade enemy ports. When the invasion commenced in 490 BCE, Xerxes led his army into Europe with pomp and ceremony. Confident of swift victory, initial successes seemed to justify his optimism. The Persian advance swept through Thrace and Macedonia, encountering little resistance until reaching Thermopylae, a narrow pass guarded by a small coalition of Greek defenders. Here, King Leonidas of Sparta and his 300 warriors made their legendary stand, holding off the Persian juggernaut for 3 days despite overwhelming odds. Though ultimately defeated, the Spartans' sacrifice bought precious time for the Greek allies to regroup and prepare for future engagements. Meanwhile, naval battles raged in the Aegean Sea, culminating in the pivotal confrontation at Salamis, under the leadership of Themistocles. The Athenian fleet lured the larger Persian navy into the narrow straits surrounding the island of Salamis, where maneuverability favored the smaller, more agile Greek ships. In a dramatic reversal, the Greeks annihilated the Persian fleet, cutting off Xerxes' supply lines and forcing him to withdraw much of his army. Humiliated but unwilling to concede defeat entirely, Xerxes left a contingent of troops behind under the command of Mardonius, instructing them to continue the fight. The following year, at Plataea, the Greeks delivered the final blow, routing the remaining Persian forces and effectively ending the threat of invasion. With their homeland secured, the Greek city-states turned their attention to liberating Ionian territories still under Persian control. The failure of the Persian Wars dealt a significant blow to the empire's reputation. For the first time in its history, the Achaemenid dynasty had been repelled, exposing weaknesses in its military strategy and administrative structure. Internal dissent simmered once again, as provincial governors and local populations questioned the viability of centralized authority. Moreover, the wars highlighted the limitations of imperial expansion, suggesting that some regions might resist assimilation indefinitely. Despite these setbacks, the Persian Empire endured. Xerxes returned to Susa, focusing on consolidating power and addressing domestic challenges. He invested heavily in infrastructure projects, including the completion of Persepolis, which served as a symbol of resilience and continuity. Yet his later years were marred by intrigue and paranoia, leading to accusations of tyranny and mismanagement. Meanwhile, the Greek victory ushered in a period of remarkable cultural and political transformation. Emboldened by their success, the city-states embarked on a journey of self-discovery, exploring questions of identity, governance, and human potential. Philosophers like Socrates and playwrights like Sophocles grappled with the implications of freedom and democracy, laying the intellectual foundations for Western civilization. Yet perhaps the most enduring legacy of the Persian Wars lies in the lessons they impart about the nature of power and conflict. On one side stood an empire built on unity, tolerance, and centralized control. On the other, a loose confederation of states united by shared values and mutual defense. Their collision revealed the strengths and weaknesses of each system, offering insights that resonate even today. As dusk fell over the ruins of Thermopylae and Salamis, echoes of battle gave way to reflections on what had transpired. Both Persians and Greeks emerged changed by the experience, not merely in terms of territorial gains or losses, but in how they understood themselves and their place in the world. And though the immediate aftermath favored Greece, the long-term consequences rippled outward, shaping the trajectory of empires yet to come. The Persian Wars, though ultimately unsuccessful in subjugating Greece, left an indelible mark on both the Achaemenid Empire and the Greek city-states. For Persia, the defeats at Marathon, Salamis, and Plataea represented more than military setbacks. They signaled a turning point in the empire's trajectory. What had once been a beacon of stability, prosperity, and innovation began to show signs of strain, as internal pressures compounded by external challenges eroded its foundations. Meanwhile, Greece emerged from the conflict emboldened, its fragmented polities coalescing around shared victories and newfound confidence. Xerxes I returned to Susa after the catastrophic losses in Greece, his reputation tarnished but not irreparably so. To maintain appearances, he focused on grandiose construction projects, pouring resources into expanding Persepolis and other imperial capitals. Elaborate palaces, Towering columns and intricate reliefs celebrated Persian might and divine favor, masking the cracks forming beneath the surface. Yet for all their splendor, these monuments could not compensate for the growing discontent simmering within the empire. One of the most pressing issues was the financial burden of prolonged warfare. The campaigns against Greece had drained the treasury, leaving little room for recovery. Taxation, already heavy under Darius, became increasingly oppressive as Xerxes sought to replenish coffers depleted by years of conflict. Provincial governors, tasked with collecting revenues, often resorted to extortion and corruption to meet quotas, further alienating local populations. In regions like Babylon and Egypt, where resentment toward Persian rule lingered from earlier rebellions, this economic strain reignited tensions that had never fully subsided. Religious grievances also played a role in destabilizing the empire. While Cyrus and Darius had championed religious tolerance, Xerxes adopted a more authoritarian approach, imposing Zoroastrian orthodoxy on diverse communities. Temples dedicated to local deities were desecrated or destroyed, priests persecuted, and sacred rituals suppressed. This shift away from inclusivity undermined one of the core principles that had sustained Persian unity, fostering hostility among subject peoples who felt their identities threatened. Perhaps the most insidious threat came from within the royal court itself. Xerxes' later years were marked by paranoia and suspicion, fueled by rumors of plots against his life. He surrounded himself with a coterie of advisors and bodyguards, many of whom jockeyed for influence through intrigue and manipulation. Corruption flourished as officials exploited their positions for personal gain, siphoning wealth from the state and exacerbating existing inequalities. The once efficient bureaucracy that had been the envy of neighboring kingdoms now struggled to function effectively, bogged down by inefficiency and graft. Against this backdrop of decline, rebellion flared anew. In Babylon, a charismatic leader named Belshazzar seized control, declaring independence and rallying support from disaffected nobles and commoners alike. Though initially successful, Belshazzar's uprising was eventually crushed by Persian forces, but not before inflicting significant damage on the region's infrastructure and economy. Similar revolts erupted in Egypt, Armenia, and parts of Asia Minor, stretching the empire's military capabilities thin and exposing vulnerabilities in its administrative structure. By the time Xerxes was assassinated in 465 BCE, stabbed to death in his bedchamber by a palace eunuch, the empire stood at a crossroads. His son, Artaxerxes I, inherited a realm rife with instability, facing challenges that would test even the most capable ruler. Determined to restore order, Artaxerxes embarked on a series of reforms aimed at addressing the root causes of unrest. He reduced taxes in heavily burdened provinces, restored temples desecrated during his father's reign, and appointed loyal satraps to oversee key regions. These measures brought temporary relief, but they failed to address deeper systemic issues. The empire's vast size made centralized control increasingly difficult, requiring constant vigilance to prevent fragmentation. Moreover, the demands of administering such a sprawling domain placed immense strain on resources, necessitating creative solutions to sustain growth and stability. Artaxerxes attempted to balance competing interests by promoting cultural exchange and fostering goodwill among diverse communities. Yet these efforts often fell short of expectations. In Greece, meanwhile, the aftermath of the Persian Wars ushered in a golden age of intellectual and artistic achievement. Freed from the specter of invasion, Athens emerged as the preeminent power in the Aegean, spearheading the formation of the Delian League, a coalition of city-states united in defense against future threats. Under the leadership of figures like Pericles, Athens invested heavily in public works, transforming the Acropolis into a symbol of civic pride and democratic ideals. Philosophers like Socrates and playwrights like Euripides explored questions of justice, morality, and human nature, laying the groundwork for Western philosophy and literature. Yet even as Athens flourished, tensions simmered between rival city-states, particularly Sparta, which viewed Athenian dominance with suspicion. These rivalries culminated in the Peloponnesian War 404 BCE, a devastating conflict that pitted Athens and its allies against Sparta and its coalition. Lasting nearly 3 decades, the war devastated much of Greece, leaving cities depopulated and economies shattered. By the time it ended, neither side could claim true victory. Instead, both were weakened, setting the stage for future foreign intervention. For Persia, the Peloponnesian War presented an opportunity to regain lost influence. Recognizing the potential benefits of exploiting Greek divisions, successive Persian kings provided financial support to Spartan forces, tipping the balance in their favor. When Athens finally surrendered in 404 BCE, it was partly due to Persian backing that enabled Sparta to achieve supremacy. In return, Sparta agreed to recognize Persian sovereignty over Ionian territories, cementing a fragile alliance between the two powers. This détente proved short-lived, however, as new players entered the scene. To the north, the rising power of Macedon began to cast a long shadow over the Balkans. Under King Philip II, Macedon unified disparate tribes and forged a formidable military machine capable of challenging both Greeks and Persians. When Philip's son, Alexander the Great, ascended the throne in 3036 BCE, he inherited not only a kingdom poised for expansion but also a burning desire to avenge past wrongs inflicted upon Greece by Persia. Alexander wasted no time launching his campaign against the Achaemenid Empire. Drawing inspiration from tales of Greek heroism during the Persian Wars, he portrayed himself as a liberator sent to free oppressed peoples from tyrannical rule. His lightning-fast conquests from Granicus to Issus to Gaugamela demonstrated unparalleled tactical brilliance, overwhelming Persian armies ill-prepared for the speed and ferocity of his assaults. By 330 BCE, Alexander stood triumphant in Persepolis, having burned the city to the ground as retribution for Xerxes' sack of Athens over a century earlier. With the fall of Persepolis, the Achaemenid dynasty came to an end. Darius III, the last of the Persian kings, fled eastward, hoping to rally support for a counteroffensive, but betrayal dogged his steps. One of his own satraps handed him over to Alexander, sealing the fate of the empire he sought to preserve. Darius died en route to captivity, his body discovered slumped in a cart, a tragic figure undone by forces beyond his control. Though the Achaemenid Empire ceased to exist, its legacy endured. Alexander, recognizing the value of Persian institutions and traditions, adopted many aspects of Achaemenid governance, blending them with Hellenistic innovations to create a hybrid system that would shape subsequent empires. The division of Alexander's realm among his generals, known collectively as the Diadochi, led to the rise of powerful successor states, including the Seleucid Empire, which controlled much of the former Persian territories. In the centuries that followed, the memory of the Achaemenids continued to inspire awe and admiration. Their achievements in administration, architecture, and multiculturalism set standards that influenced Roman, Parthian, and Sasanian rulers alike. Tales of Cyrus the Great, in particular, resonated across cultures, earning him a place among history's most revered leaders. As twilight descended over the ruins of Persepolis, casting long shadows across broken columns and scorched earth, echoes of the past lingered, a reminder of what had been lost and what might have been preserved. The story of the Achaemenid Empire serves as both cautionary tale and testament to humanity's capacity for greatness, illustrating how empires rise and fall not solely through conquest, but through the choices made by those who lead them. The fall of the Achaemenid Empire marked not only the end of one of history's most remarkable dynasties, but also the dawn of a new era, one defined by the meteoric rise of Alexander the Great, whose conquests reshaped the ancient world. Driven by ambition, vengeance, and a vision of unity, Alexander embarked on a campaign that would bring him face to face with the remnants of Persian power, culminating in the definitive collapse of the empire founded by Cyrus the Great. When Alexander ascended the throne of Macedon in 3036 BCE at the age of 20, he inherited a kingdom poised for greatness. His father, King Philip II, had spent years consolidating Macedonian territories, forging alliances, and building a professional army unmatched in discipline and innovation. The introduction of the phalanx, a tightly packed formation of infantry armed with long spears, revolutionized warfare, enabling Macedonians to dominate their Greek rivals. Yet it was Alexander who transformed this military machine into an instrument of unparalleled conquest. From the outset, Alexander viewed Persia as his ultimate adversary. Tales of Xerxes' invasion of Greece over a century earlier still burned brightly in the collective memory of the Greek city-state. For Alexander, avenging these past wrongs became a personal crusade, fueled by a desire to prove himself worthy of his legendary predecessors, including Achilles, whom he idolized. He saw himself not merely as a conqueror but as a liberator sent to free oppressed peoples from Persian tyranny, a narrative carefully crafted to rally support among both Greeks and subject populations within the empire. Preparations for the invasion were meticulous. Alexander assembled a diverse force comprising Macedonians, Greeks, Thracians, Illyrians, and other allies, totaling approximately 40,000 troops. Naval contingents supplemented the land army, ensuring mobility and flexibility across varied terrains. Supplies were stockpiled, logistics planned, and intelligence gathered about Persian defenses. By the spring of 3034 BCE, everything was in place for the crossing of the Hellespont, the symbolic boundary between Europe and Asia. The first major engagement occurred at the Battle of Granicus, May 3034 BCE, where Alexander faced a large Persian army commanded by regional satraps eager to halt the Macedonian advance. Despite being outnumbered, Alexander employed bold tactics, personally leading a cavalry charge that shattered the enemy lines. The victory secured control over much of Asia Minor, bolstering morale among his troops and striking fear into Persian hearts. Encouraged by this success, Alexander pressed onward, targeting key cities and fortresses along the coast. As he moved southward, he encountered resistance in places like Halicarnassus and Miletus, but his superior siege techniques and relentless determination ensured eventual triumph. Each victory brought him closer to confronting Darius III, the beleaguered ruler struggling to hold together the fracturing empire. In November 33 BCE, the two leaders finally met at the Battle of Issysi, near the modern-day border between Turkey and Syria. Darius, commanding a massive army that included elite units such as the Immortals, sought to crush Alexander decisively. However, Alexander's strategic genius once again proved decisive. Using the terrain to his advantage, he outmaneuvered the larger Persian force, isolating Darius and forcing him to flee the battlefield. Though Darius escaped with his life, he left behind his family, including his wife, mother, and children, as captives. Rather than pursuing Darius immediately, Alexander chose to consolidate his gains, turning his attention to the wealthy cities of Phoenicia and Egypt. Tyre, the formidable maritime power protected by its island fortress, posed a significant challenge. After a grueling 7-month siege involving naval blockades and engineering marvels, Alexander breached the city's defenses, executing thousands of defenders and selling survivors into slavery. This brutal display served as both punishment and warning to others who might resist. Egypt welcomed Alexander as a liberator, weary of Persian misrule and eager for stability. In Memphis, he was crowned pharaoh, adopting native titles and participating in traditional ceremonies to win the hearts of his new subject. To commemorate his arrival, he founded Alexandria, a city destined to become a center of learning and culture under Ptolemaic rule. From there, he journeyed to Seleucia Oasis, consulting the Oracle of Amun, which reportedly confirmed his divine status, a claim he used to legitimize his authority. With Egypt secured, Alexander turned eastward, determined to confront Darius once more. The stage was set for the climactic showdown at the Battle of Gaugamela, October 3031 BCE. Located near present-day Mosul in Iraq, the battlefield stretched across open plains ideal for large-scale engagements. Darius, aware of Alexander's tactical brilliance, prepared elaborate traps, including scythed chariots and hidden reserves. Yet none of these measures could match the speed and precision of Alexander's maneuvers. At Gaugamela, Alexander executed a brilliant feint, drawing Darius's forces into a trap before launching a devastating counterattack. Once again, Darius fled, abandoning his army and leaving behind vast riches, including royal treasures and administrative records. With Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis falling rapidly thereafter, the heart of the Persian Empire lay exposed and vulnerable. Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of the Achaemenids, suffered a fate befitting its symbolic importance. In a calculated act of retribution, Alexander ordered the city burned to the ground, allegedly sparked by drunken revelry following a banquet. Flames consumed palaces, archives, and temples, reducing centuries of artistry and achievement to ash. Some historians suggest the destruction was intentional, meant to erase the memory of Persian oppression. Others argue it was accidental, a tragic consequence of unchecked revelry. Regardless of intent, the burning of Persepolis signaled the definitive end of the Achaemenid dynasty. Darius III, meanwhile, continued his desperate flight eastward, seeking refuge among loyal satraps and tribal leaders. But betrayal dogged his steps. In July 3030 BCE, while attempting to reach Bactria, he was captured by Bessus, the satrap of Bactria, who hoped to curry favor with Alexander by handing over the deposed king, before Bessus could deliver Darius alive. However, Alexander's forces closed in. Fearing capture, Bessus murdered Darius and declared himself king, adopting the regnal name Artaxerxes. When Alexander discovered Darius's body abandoned in a cart, he reportedly wept openly, mourning the death of a fellow monarch, even if they had been enemies. This gesture underscored Alexander's complex relationship with the Persians, blending respect for their achievements with disdain for their perceived failures. Determined to punish those responsible for Darius's demise, Alexander pursued Bessus relentlessly, capturing and executing him after a brief trial. With Darius dead and Bessus eliminated, Alexander proclaimed himself king of Asia, asserting dominion over the former Persian territories. Yet his ambitions extended far beyond mere conquest. Inspired by the cosmopolitan ideals of the Achaemenids, he sought to create a unified realm blending Greek and Persian traditions. To achieve this, he implemented sweeping reforms aimed at fostering integration and cooperation. Persian nobles were invited to join his court. Intermarriage between Greeks and Persians encouraged, and local customs preserved wherever possible. These policies sparked resentment among many Macedonian officers and soldiers, who viewed them as concessions to a defeated foe. Mutinies erupted periodically, forcing Alexander to quell dissent through a combination of diplomacy and harsh discipline. Despite these challenges, he remained steadfast in his vision, believing that true greatness lay not in domination but in synthesis. As Alexander pushed further east, subjugating regions as distant as India, his health began to deteriorate. Years of relentless campaigning, coupled with injuries sustained in battle, took a toll on his physical well-being. Chroniclers describe him as increasingly erratic, prone to fits of rage and paranoia. Some accounts attribute his decline to illness, Others suggest psychological breakdown brought on by isolation and hubris. In June 33 BCE, while staying in Babylon, Alexander fell gravely ill. Whether poisoned or struck by fever remains a matter of debate, but what is certain is that he died shortly thereafter, leaving no clear heir to assume the throne. His sudden passing plunged the empire into chaos, as rival generals vied for control of the vast territories he had conquered. The division of Alexander's realm among his successors, known collectively as the Diadochi, led to the rise of powerful kingdoms, including the Seleucid Empire, which controlled much of the former Persian territories. Under rulers like Seleucus the Peristenochider, elements of Achaemenid governance were preserved and adapted to suit Hellenistic priorities. Cities like Antioch and Seleucia became centers of trade and culture, bridging east and west in ways reminiscent of Cyrus's original vision. Yet even as new empires emerged, memories of the Achaemenids endured. Their innovations in administration, architecture, and multiculturalism influenced subsequent rulers, from Romans to Parthians to Sasanians. Tales of Cyrus the Great, in particular, resonated across cultures, earning him a place among history's most revered leaders. As twilight descended over the ruins of Persepolis, casting long shadows across broken columns and scorched earth, echoes of the past lingered, a reminder of what had been lost and what might have been preserved. The story of the Achaemenid Empire serves as both cautionary tale and testament to humanity's capacity for greatness, illustrating how empires rise and fall not solely through conquest, but through the choices made by those who lead them. The collapse of the Achaemenid Empire and the subsequent division of Alexander the Great's vast realm marked the end of an era, but not the erasure of its influence. The ideals, institutions, and innovations pioneered by Cyrus the Great and his successors continued to shape the course of history long after their empire had crumbled. From the rise of successor states like the Seleucid Empire to the cultural and administrative practices adopted by later civilizations, the legacy of the Achaemenids endured as a testament to their enduring impact on human civilization. Following Alexander's death in 33 BCE, his generals, known collectively as the Diadochi, engaged in a bitter struggle for control over his fragmented territories. This period of turmoil gave rise to three dominant powers: the Ptolemaic kingdom in Egypt, the Seleucid Empire in Persia and Mesopotamia, and the Antigonid dynasty in Macedonia. Of these, the Seleucid Empire inherited the largest share of former Achaemenid lands, encompassing regions stretching from Anatolia to Central Asia. Under rulers like Seleucus the Peristenochider, the Seleucids sought to consolidate their authority by blending Hellenistic culture with Persian traditions. They recognized the value of Achaemenid administrative systems, which had proven effective in governing diverse populations across vast distances. Satrapies were retained but reorganized into provinces overseen by Greek-appointed governors, ensuring centralized control while preserving local autonomy. Taxation policies, standardized weights and measures, and postal networks, all hallmarks of Achaemenid governance, were adapted to suit Hellenistic priorities. Cities became focal points of this hybrid system, serving as hubs of trade, culture, and political power. Seleucus founded numerous urban centers, including Antioch on the Orontes River and Seleucia on the Tigris, both designed to emulate the grandeur of Persepolis and Susa. These cities featured grid-like layouts, monumental architecture, and public spaces that reflected a synthesis of Greek and Persian aesthetics. Markets bustled with merchants trading goods from India, Arabia, and the Mediterranean, underscoring the interconnectedness fostered by Achaemenid infrastructure. Religious tolerance also persisted under the Seleucids, though tensions occasionally flared between polytheistic Greeks and monotheistic Jews or Zoroastrians. Efforts to impose Hellenistic deities sometimes sparked resistance, most notably during the Maccabean Revolt 1670 BCE, when Jewish rebels fought against attempts to suppress their faith. Nevertheless, the principle of respecting local customs remained integral to maintaining stability. A lesson learned from the Achaemenids' inclusive approach. Beyond politics and administration, the Achaemenid legacy extended into art, architecture, and intellectual pursuits. The grandeur of Persepolis inspired generations of builders, evident in structures like the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus and the Mausoleum at Halicarnassus, both considered wonders of the ancient world. Intricate reliefs depicting scenes of tribute and ceremony found echoes in Hellenistic mosaics and sculptures, celebrating the diversity of humanity united under a single ruler. In philosophy and literature, too, traces of Achaemenid thought can be discerned. Greek philosophers like Aristotle grappled with questions of justice, governance, and human nature, drawing inspiration from the cosmopolitan ideals espoused by Cyrus and Darius. Histories written by Herodotus and Xenophon immortalized the achievements of the Achaemenids, casting them as paragons of virtue and wisdom. Even biblical texts celebrated Cyrus as a messianic figure sent by God to liberate his people, a testament to his reputation as a benevolent leader committed to freedom and fairness. Yet perhaps the most profound aspect of the Achaemenid legacy lay in its vision of unity amidst diversity. Cyrus's dream of creating a world where justice prevailed and humanity thrived resonated deeply with future generations, inspiring leaders to strive for harmony despite differences. This ideal found expression in various forms throughout antiquity, from Roman concepts of universal citizenship to Parthian efforts to reconcile Rhenanian and Hellenistic traditions. The Parthians, who emerged as a major power in the mid-3rd century BCE, drew heavily upon Achaemenid precedents in forging their own empire. Ruling from Ctesiphon near modern-day Baghdad, they adopted many aspects of Persian culture, including language, religion, and ceremonial practices. Their decentralized system of governance mirrored the Achaemenid model, relying on semi-autonomous vassal kings to manage frontier regions while maintaining loyalty to the central authority. Military tactics, particularly the use of mounted archers, reflected centuries-old Persian strategies refined over time. Similarly, the Sasanian Empire 2461 CE, which succeeded the Parthians, positioned itself as the rightful heir to Achaemenid glory. Under rulers like Shapur I and Khosrow I, the Sasanians revived Zoroastrianism as the state religion, emphasizing continuity with pre-Hellenistic traditions. Architectural marvels like the Ta Khusra Arch at Ctesiphon echoed the splendor of Persepolis, while bureaucratic reforms reinforced the importance of efficient administration. Diplomatic missions to Rome and China underscored the Sasanians' commitment to fostering international connections, a hallmark of Achaemenid diplomacy. Even outside Iran proper, echoes of the Achaemenid legacy reverberated across continents. In India, the Maurya Empire, under Ashoka, embraced principles of religious tolerance and ethical governance reminiscent of Cyrus's edicts. Chinese dynasties incorporated elements of Persian bureaucracy into their own systems, recognizing its effectiveness in managing large populations. Islamic caliphates, emerging centuries later, preserved Achaemenid knowledge through translations of scientific and philosophical works, ensuring that their contributions to medicine, astronomy, and mathematics reached new audiences. For all its far-reaching influence, however, the memory of the Achaemenids waxed and waned depending on historical context. During periods of foreign domination, such as the Arab conquest of Persia in the 7th century CE, references to pre-Islamic empires were often suppressed or marginalized. Yet even then, fragments of Achaemenid heritage survived in folklore, poetry, and oral traditions, waiting to be rediscovered. The Renaissance witnessed a renewed interest in classical antiquity, sparking curiosity about the Achaemenids among European scholars. Travelers like Pietro della Vadi journeyed to Persepolis, documenting its ruins and speculating about their significance. Archaeological excavations in the 19th and 20th centuries unearthed artifacts that shed light on daily life, religious practices, and artistic achievements within the empire. Inscriptions like the Behistun relief provided invaluable insights into Achaemenid history, enabling historians to reconstruct narratives previously obscured by time. Today, the legacy of the Achaemenids continues to inspire admiration and reflection. Their emphasis on inclusivity, innovation, and justice offers lessons relevant to contemporary challenges, reminding us of the possibility inherent in collaboration and mutual respect. Monuments like Persepolis stand as enduring symbols of human creativity and ambition, inviting visitors to contemplate the heights humanity can achieve when guided by vision and compassion. As twilight descended over the plains of Persis, casting golden light across fields once traversed by Cyrus's armies, echoes of the past lingered, a reminder of what had been accomplished and what might yet be realized. The story of the Achaemenid Empire serves as both cautionary tale and testament to humanity's capacity for greatness, illustrating how empires rise and fall not solely through conquest, but through the choices made by those who lead them. The legacy of Cyrus the Great extends far beyond the boundaries of his empire or the era in which he lived. His name has become synonymous with ideals of justice, tolerance, and visionary leadership, qualities that transcend time and geography. From ancient chronicles to modern scholarship, Cyrus remains a figure of profound admiration, celebrated not only for his military conquests, but also for his humanity and wisdom. In this chapter, we explore how Cyrus's influence has resonated through millennia, shaping civilizations, inspiring movements, and offering timeless lessons about the nature of power and governance. One of the most enduring tributes to Cyrus comes from biblical texts, where he is hailed as a messianic figure sent by God to liberate his people. The Book of Ezra recounts how Cyrus issued a decree allowing the Jewish exiles deported by Nebuchadnezzar II to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple. This act of compassion earned him the title Anointed of the Lord, a distinction reserved for prophets and kings chosen to fulfill divine purposes. For Jews and Christians alike, Cyrus represents an archetype of righteous leadership, a ruler who uses his authority to uplift rather than oppress. The Cyrus cylinder, discovered in 1879 during excavations at Babylon, further cements his reputation as a pioneer of human rights. Often referred to as the first charter of human rights, this clay artifact bears an inscription detailing Cyrus's policies of religious freedom, repatriation of displaced peoples, and respect for local customs. While some scholars debate whether the cylinder reflects genuine reform or clever propaganda, there is no denying its symbolic significance. It embodies the principles of inclusivity and justice that have inspired countless generations to envision societies built on fairness and equality. These ideals found fertile ground during the Enlightenment, when philosophers like John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau championed concepts of individual liberty and social contract theory. Though they may not have directly cited Cyrus, their arguments echoed themes present in his edicts, namely, that legitimate authority derives from service to the governed rather than domination over them. Similarly, the founding fathers of the United States drew inspiration from classical models of governance, including those attributed to Cyrus, as they crafted documents like the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. In more recent history, the spirit of Cyrus has been invoked in struggles for civil rights and self-determination. Figures like Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr., who advocated nonviolent resistance against oppression, implicitly followed in his footsteps by emphasizing dignity, dialogue, and reconciliation. Even political leaders such as Nelson Mandela, upon assuming South Africa's presidency after decades of apartheid, spoke of creating a rainbow nation, united by shared values. a vision strikingly similar to Cyrus's dream of a harmonious multicultural empire. Beyond politics, Cyrus's impact can be seen in fields as diverse as education, law, and international relations. Educational institutions worldwide teach his achievements as case studies in effective leadership and ethical decision-making. Legal frameworks promoting religious freedom and minority rights owe much to precedents set by Cyrus, whose insistence on respecting local traditions anticipated modern notions of cultural pluralism. Diplomats cite his example when advocating for peaceful resolutions to conflicts, underscoring the importance of diplomacy over force. Archaeology and historical research have also played crucial roles in preserving Cyrus's memory. Excavations at sites like Pasargadae, Persepolis, and Susa have uncovered artifacts that illuminate daily life, artistic expression, and administrative practices within the Achaemenid Empire. These discoveries provide tangible evidence of Cyrus's innovations, from standardized coinage to advanced irrigation systems, reinforcing his status as a transformative figure in human history. Artistic representations of Cyrus abound, reflecting his enduring appeal across cultures. Paintings, sculptures, and literary works depict him as a paragon of virtue, often juxtaposing his benevolence with the cruelty of contemporaneous rulers. Poets like Ferdowsi immortalized him in the Shahnameh, Iran's national epic, portraying him as a hero whose deeds shaped the destiny of nations. Such portrayals ensure that Cyrus remains a living presence in collective imagination, bridging past and present. Yet perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Cyrus's legacy lies in its universality. Regardless of cultural or ideological background, people find something compelling in his story. A shepherd boy rising to greatness through courage, wisdom, and compassion. His willingness to embrace diversity, challenge injustice, and pursue unity offers a blueprint for addressing contemporary challenges, from climate change to social inequality. By reminding us of our shared humanity, Cyrus inspires hope that cooperation and understanding can overcome division and strife. As global awareness grows regarding issues like migration, refugee crises, and cultural preservation, Cyrus's example takes on renewed relevance. His policy of allowing displaced peoples to return home and practice their faith freely serves as a model for addressing displacement caused by war, persecution, or environmental degradation. Efforts to protect endangered languages, traditions, and heritage sites echo his commitment to safeguarding cultural identity amidst globalization. Moreover, Cyrus's emphasis on infrastructure development highlights the importance of investing in sustainable solutions for future prosperity. Roads, bridges, and water management systems constructed under his reign facilitated trade, communication, and agricultural productivity, laying the groundwork for centuries of progress. Today, initiatives aimed at improving connectivity, reducing poverty, and fostering economic growth draw inspiration from these early achievements. In moments of crisis, leaders often look to historical figures for guidance, and few embody resilience and adaptability better than Cyrus. Whether navigating internal dissent, external threats, or natural disasters, his ability to remain steadfast while adapting strategies underscores the value of flexibility and foresight. As nations grapple with uncertainty amid rapid technological advancement and shifting geopolitical landscapes, Cyrus's pragmatism provides valuable lessons about balancing tradition with innovation. Ultimately, the enduring echoes of Cyrus the Great remind us that true greatness stems not from wielding power but from using it wisely. His vision of a world where justice prevails and humanity thrives continues to inspire individuals and communities striving for a brighter tomorrow. Through acts of kindness, humility, and determination, each generation contributes to realizing this dream, ensuring that Cyrus's legacy endures not merely as a relic of the past, but as a beacon for the future. As we reach the final chapter of this epic narrative, it is fitting to reflect on the timeless lessons that emerge from the life and legacy of Cyrus the Great. His story, a tale of humble beginnings, visionary leadership, and enduring impact, offers profound insights into the nature of power, justice, and humanity itself. These lessons transcend the boundaries of time and geography, resonating as powerfully today as they did over 2 millennia ago. In examining his achievements and philosophy, we uncover principles that remain relevant not only for rulers but for all who seek to make a positive difference in the world. 1. The power of vision. At the heart of Cyrus's greatness lies his unwavering vision, a dream of creating a unified world where justice prevailed and humanity thrived. Unlike many conquerors who sought dominion for its own sake, Cyrus pursued expansion with purpose, aiming to build bridges rather than walls. He understood that true leadership requires more than ambition. It demands clarity of purpose and a commitment to higher ideals. This lesson holds particular significance in an age marked by rapid change and uncertainty. Whether leading nations, organizations, or communities, individuals must articulate compelling visions that inspire others to work toward common goals. By focusing on what unites us rather than divides us, leaders can foster collaboration and resilience in the face of challenges. 2. Compassion as strength. One of Cyrus's most remarkable qualities was his capacity for compassion, a trait often overlooked in discussions of leadership. From sparing the life of Croesus to allowing displaced peoples to return home, Cyrus demonstrated that strength does not preclude kindness. On the contrary, acts of mercy and understanding can strengthen bonds of loyalty while earning admiration even among adversaries. In contemporary contexts, this principle underscores the importance of empathy in decision-making. Leaders who prioritize the well-being of their constituents, whether employees, citizens, or stakeholders, are better equipped to navigate crises and build trust. Compassion fosters goodwill, creating environments where innovation and cooperation flourish. 3. Unity through diversity. Cyrus's embrace of multiculturalism stands as one of his greatest achievements. By respecting local customs, languages, and religions, he transformed conquered territories into integral parts of a cohesive empire. This approach not only reduced resistance but also enriched the empire culturally and economically. Today, as societies grapple with issues of identity and inclusion, Cyrus's example offers valuable guidance. Embracing diversity rather than fearing it can unlock untapped potential, fostering creativity and mutual respect. Organizations and governments that champion inclusivity are better positioned to thrive in an interconnected world. 4. Justice as the foundation of authority. Central to Cyrus's philosophy was the belief that legitimate authority derives from service to the governed. His policies of fairness, accountability, and transparency ensured that even those living far from the imperial capital felt connected to the broader community. This emphasis on justice helped stabilize the empire during periods of transition and turmoil. Modern institutions would do well to heed this lesson. Trust in governance, be it political, corporate, or social, depends on perceptions of fairness and integrity. When leaders act transparently and hold themselves accountable, they reinforce confidence in systems and processes, paving the way for sustained progress. 5. Adaptability in leadership. Cyrus's ability to adapt strategies based on circumstances exemplifies another key aspect of effective leadership. Whether employing psychological warfare against Lydia or diverting rivers to infiltrate Babylon, he demonstrated flexibility and resourcefulness in achieving objectives. Such adaptability enabled him to overcome obstacles that might have thwarted less agile minds. In our fast-paced world, adaptability is more crucial than ever. Technological advancements, shifting demographics, and evolving expectations require leaders to remain nimble, adjusting plans without losing sight of overarching goals. Those who embrace change as an opportunity rather than a threat are best suited to lead through transformation. 6. Legacy over legacy. While Cyrus achieved monumental success during his lifetime, his enduring influence stems from the values he embodied rather than the territories he controlled. Monuments like Persepolis may crumble, but ideas endure. By prioritizing principles over possessions, Cyrus ensured that his legacy would outlast physical structures. This insight carries weight for anyone seeking to leave a mark on history. True immortality lies not in amassing wealth or accolades, but in contributing meaningfully to the lives of others. Acts of kindness, mentorship, and advocacy ripple outward, shaping futures long after individual lifetimes conclude. 7. The fragility of power. Though Cyrus built an empire spanning continents, its eventual decline serves as a poignant reminder of power's fragility. Succession disputes, economic strain, and internal dissent ultimately fractured the Achaemenid dynasty, illustrating how even the mightiest empires can falter if underlying weaknesses go unaddressed. For contemporary leaders, this cautionary tale emphasizes the need for vigilance and humility. No achievement is immune to reversal. Complacency invites decay. By remaining attentive to foundational elements, such as morale, infrastructure, and equity, leaders can mitigate risks associated with unchecked growth or hubris. 8. Hope as a catalyst. Above all, Cyrus's story embodies hope, a belief in humanity's capacity to rise above division and strife. Born under dire circumstances, he defied fate to become a beacon of unity and progress. His journey reminds us that no challenge is insurmountable when guided by determination and purpose. In times of despair, whether personal or collective, Cyrus's example encourages perseverance. Challenges may seem insurmountable, yet history repeatedly demonstrates humanity's resilience. By nurturing hope and striving for improvement, we honor the spirit of innovation and compassion that defined Cyrus's reign. As twilight descends over Pasargadae, casting golden light across the tomb where Cyrus rests, echoes of his legacy linger, a testament to the boundless possibilities of human endeavor. His name continues to inspire admiration and reflection, reminding us that greatness lies not in domination but in service, not in force but in wisdom, not in conquest but in unity. Through acts of courage, compassion, and vision, each generation contributes to realizing Cyrus's dream, a world where justice prevails and humanity thrives. And so, though millennia separate us from the shepherd boy who rose to unite empires, his voice still calls across the ages, urging us to build bridges, cherish diversity, and strive for a brighter tomorrow. With that, the saga of Cyrus the Great concludes, but his story lives on, carried forward by all who dare to dream of greatness.